Cup. Good morning and welcome to Thursday's edition of the Half Empty Cup, and I guarantee you this is going to be another one of these shows where, again, it's going to be a different way of thinking about things and the possibilities that, hey, things aren't quite what they told us that they were or what we tend to believe. And some of these shows, it gets for some people, it'll get the emotions going because these are things where a lot of people, Jason, have a very defined idea of how they think that things are, and anybody that opposes that is met with skepticism.
Yeah, and you know that there's kind of two ways to handle how you would look at new information coming in that might not be what you think is the truth of things. One, you can just dismiss it and walk from it and say it's nonsense. Or two, you can at least look at it and then make a decision afterwards. You know, and then there's two outcomes. I looked at the other way, and I think it's bunk. Or I looked at the other way, and man, something is a lot different than what I perceived. And having an open mind is tough. You know, the saying is, it's easier to be fooled than it is to be convinced that you've been fooled. You know, but people don't like to admit that they see something in a wrong fashion, or maybe that's how they're looking at things is not 100% true. And so when we have Flat Earth Dave coming on like we are today, this will be a second time on the Half Empty Cup of Joe. He's really good to have on the show for this topic because I looked at a lot of guys that I could bring on and talk about this, and I didn't realize until last month's show that he had taken years of astronomy. You know, I knew he knew the globe model really well, but I didn't realize he actually studied it. Which this is why I chose him, because he knows the model that we all understand and grew up looking at and learning. And he had to do something a lot of us wouldn't do. He was in completely with the globe model, and he had to look at the other. Somebody woke him up to it. Maybe he'll tell us that story of how he, what made him change his mind, what led him down the path. And it's really good. No matter what you think or believe or understand, I think it's highly commendable that somebody knows both sides and made a decision. He just doesn't know one side, and then he's just going to stick to that. And I don't want to look at your model. You know, I always find it interesting, even the stuff I don't believe in, when somebody has an alternative way of looking at something, and people just dismiss it without even looking at it. You know, people have this really sophomoric view of what flat Earth is, and I don't really care if anyone believes it's flat Earth. You know, Joe doesn't believe it. I don't really care, but take a look at the model. You know, and I think that's what makes people afraid. As I'm going to get Dave in here with us, what makes people afraid is that they might look and see something that makes sense, Dave. So I want to thank you for coming on with us today. Where are we headed today? What direction are we going?
We're going down the rabbit hole because there's no bottom. You know, got so many things I want to say about your opening statements there. You know, belief is the enemy of knowing. And there's so many, you know, there's a lot of people that have open minds, including, I thought I was one of them. I did a podcast called Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, looking into many of the deceptions of this world. And, you know, people come to me with crazy stuff, and I'm like, okay, tell me more. And I'd look into it and either rule it out or be like, wow, there's something there. But when people came to me with flat Earth, I'm like, you're an idiot, and I banned from life for even suggesting. You know, you're no longer allowed to comment, and I hope you don't listen anymore because they're too stupid. But then I was forced to look by a good friend, researcher, Sophia Smallstorm, and I went in with a bad attitude. I didn't went in to find the truth. I went in to prove flat Earth to be a joke and prove the globe. And that's how you become a flat earther, or at minimum, a globe skeptic, if you're afraid to categorize yourself as a flat earther, because the Earth is clearly, demonstrably, provably a level, horizontal, non-rotating plane. And one of the things you said was that, people come to us all the time. They go, you flat earthers, you'll never change your mind no matter what we show you. Well, that's not true. We were Globers just like you, and we changed our minds based on information. And, the thing is, I offer 3 Bitcoins for 1 globe proof. I have a challenge. Get my app, watch the daily video each day for 2 weeks. At the end of that 2 weeks, if you think you have a proof, send it to me. But before you do, check out the frequently asked questions page. Make sure your question isn't answered there, which it probably is. And that's how you, too, will become a flat earther and be criticized by your close family and friends.
Oh, there's a lot there. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to open the phone lines immediately because Dave, we had the phone lines roaring all the way to the end of the show last month. Questions about the model, questions or whatever, debating. 877-536-1360. One more time, it's 877-536-1360. You can text a question there if you don't want to come on the air and talk, but you can call in. Now, I got a few questions for Dave. I'm sure the callers can set us off course. So we'll have a full show for sure, Dave.
So anyone calling in with a question, try to control your emotions and try to ask it like a question. Don't say, flat Earth is stupid because. Ask your question and then listen to the answer. Now, I know we have time, we have breaks, we have all sorts of restrictions on us here. I will keep my answers as short as possible, but they're going to be longer than your question. So I will answer them as brief and as clearly, and I'll paint a visual picture for you. And then it's up to you to go research the stuff yourself. If you want to research flat Earth, you can't Google. Oh, here we go. Here comes one of those breaks.
We're going to hit a break. Joe's going to come in with the response. 877-536-1360. We got one caller in already. Listen in. It should be fun.
We're back here, the half-empty cup, Joe and Jason, and I'm getting word that there's an issue with the AM signal. The stream is up. The stream is running. It always is a little weird when you get a technical issue that seemingly never happens when you're touching on one of these more touchy subjects like flat Earth, but we are aware of it. My guess is there's nothing we can do about it. It's most likely what we've been learning lately anyway is some type of power outage. A lot of construction where the radio station, a lot of growth where the radio station is. So this tends to happen, but it is kind of interesting when it happens like that.
It is interesting, Joe, absolutely, that right before we come on with Dave, AM radio goes down. So Dave, we still have the podcast. We're still streaming everywhere, but apparently Johnstown, Colorado's radio station is down. It's a coincidence, I believe, Dave, I guess. What do you say?
It happens all the time whenever I go on shows. It's I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but it's kind of weird.
How often when you go on other shows does this happen? Or just
different things
crashes?
happen. Like yesterday, I was on a new show new to flat Earth, and the key videos that I needed to pull up disappeared. They were gone they were just missing. Like it's never happened before. And then there's technical stuff all the time. But you know what? I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. Let's just say that, stuff happens. Okay? Stuff happens.
I consider myself a conspiracy theorist. I don't know why people run and hide from that word. Conspiracies are real things. And conspiracy fact is what you get out of conspiracy theories.
Well, I'm just a pre-reality forecaster because everything I said in the last 10, 15 years has come true. So I'm a conspiracy analyst at minimum, and I'm basically a future news reporter.
There you go. Excellent. Dave, did you want to get into something, or should we have the one caller that I held through the break?
Let's go through the caller first, then we'll talk about whatever until another caller comes in. What's the phone number for people to call in?
The phone number is 877-536-1360. You can call anywhere, and if anyone who's streaming in anywhere in the country or the world, you can call in and be a part of the show. We got Professor Glenn. This should be fun, Glenn. Go ahead. I can't wait for your question or comment for Dave.
Oh, well, I'm very open-minded. I mean, I'm open to anything. If it can be proven, I'm cool with it. But So I'm sitting in my backyard getting my vitamin D treatment for the day. I'm looking at this big round sun. When the moon comes up, it's round. All the planets apparently are round.
Apparently.
Yeah, allegedly. I was a history and geography teacher for 25 years. The Greeks, the Egyptians, all had figured it out, supposedly, the curvature of the Earth based on their geometry. There are AT&T long line towers near where I live. They're about every 27 miles or so because of the curvature of the Earth.
Yeah.
All that's a lie, right? That's all a lie.
No, it's not a lie. You're just hold on. You've got over three things already that I need to address. So I'm gonna forget them all if I don't start. You said that the sun and the moon are round, but you're assuming that the sun and the moon are physical things up in an expanded universe galaxy. You know that the moon is a giant rock that's floating around the Earth perfectly and somehow matches women's menstrual cycles. You think that the sun is 93 million miles away, where the story of the sun is there was a Big Bang, and then all of the gases decided to collapse upon each other when never before have gases done that. Gases violently fill the available space, but for some reason, when you have enough gases, they decide to do the opposite and collapse upon each other. That's a cool story. There's no possibility that it's real. So the other thing is, I think the moon is a sphere. It has nothing to do with the Earth. I don't think it's a physical place. I think that the moon that we see is provably just an image of the real thing, which I don't know what that is, but I believe that's above the firmament. The other thing you were talking about before, you said the Greeks figured it out. Eratosthenes was drilled into our heads. Eratosthenes, 2,000 years ago, with his famous sticks and shadows experiment, was never written about until the mid-1900s. So the guy that figured out the shape of the Earth, for 2,000 years, nobody wrote a book about him and his experiment. There was supposedly a guy back then, a mathematician, but the first mention of his experiment was in the mid-1900s. That's kind of weird. Okay, but the problem with that is it works perfectly on a flat Earth. Get two upright things, two bottles, two lighters, two whatever. Stand them up a couple feet apart on your desk or on your floor and hold a light directly over one of them. Okay, because on the flat Earth the sun is small and local. So the first one that has the light under it, there'll be zero shadow. There'll be no shadow because the light is right over it. And the other one will have a shadow. You can do the same math that Eratosthenes allegedly did and prove the curvature of your floor, but you know that your floor is flat. So Eratosthenes assumed that the sun rays come in parallel because it's what they call infinitely far. They don't know how far it is, but it's so far away that the rays look parallel. Nobody in history has ever seen parallel rays. They come in crepuscular. Look up at the next time the sun is out and there's clouds in the sky. Look at the rays. They come out crepuscular, showing that the sun is very small and local. And then the other one was, you talked about the power lines for the curve of the Earth. I've never heard that claim before. But if you actually, what's that?
These are the AT&T long line towers. They're actually out of service now, but they were the first digital transmission towers from point to point.
Yes.
And they're about every 27 miles apart. Then there's a whole bunch on where I live that supposedly are line of sight that send signals, and that they compensate for the curvature of the Earth to send the signals around the Earth or the country.
Yeah. So 27 miles apart, they'd have to be over 485 feet above the ground to reach each other. And hey, maybe they were that high. 485 feet, that's 48 stories. Okay, that's half the height of the Twin Towers. Your line's breaking up a little bit, but
let me jump in, Dave. So Glenn, he's saying and Dave, you understand the numbers better, the curvature.
You guys are all garbled. You're roboting.
Oh, okay. So
can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Sometimes there's a little bit
I'm good. You're back.
Okay, good. Sometimes it's the internet. Glenn, because crepuscular, I want to do two things because Dave, you're way above some of the people going to be asking questions. I'm going to tone it down some. Crepuscular, that means the sun rays are coming out in different directions. So when you see the sun,
and they spread out like in a cone shape.
The way that I would picture this for somebody on the radio would be when you see the sun in the sky and there's clouds. You'll see the sun rays coming through, and the sun rays don't come straight down from far away, off in some galaxy far away. They come in different directions, to the left, to the right, straight down. you see that it's coming from that source, and it doesn't make sense versus the globe model. And then, Glenn, Dave, you can help with the math when it comes to 8 inches per mile squared or whatever it is. What you're saying is for line of sight, that those towers that Glenn's talking about would have to be how tall? I mean, as tall as some skyscrapers for the line of sight.
Well, I don't think, maybe they're not that far away from each other, but I know that like they're like one's in my county and one's in the next county. They might maybe 20 miles away. How tall would it
20 miles is still, so 20 miles. Well, you can have line of sight, but they use microwave towers now that are hundreds of miles apart, where there'd be over miles of curvature, and they are provably line of sight. And then they claim that they bounce off the ionosphere, right? When they said, whoa, they did it. You know, Marconi did his famous transmission across the Atlantic, and everyone said, you're not going to be able to do it. And then when he did it, they're like, oh, it's bouncing off the ionosphere. But then they tell us, and this gets really technical. I don't want to get too technical, but that I think it's over 40 megahertz would go right through the ionosphere. Well, they're sending stuff at 100 megahertz, and it's still going. So you can't claim the bounce off the ionosphere. We can see hundreds of miles using under the right conditions. Like there was a new sighting from a top of a not too high mountain, but we can see these other mountains over 700 miles away. At 700 miles, calculating in from that viewer height, because the higher you are, the farther you can see on a ball and a flat Earth. The tops of those mountains should be over 40 miles below a physical curve, but we can see all of them. There is no other explanation. There is one other explanation. The Earth is flat, a level horizontal plane, or the Earth is 10,000 times bigger than they tell us. Okay? Either one of those is an issue.
So I've made that observation before, Dave, on shows in the past where I said, well, what if the Earth that we're on isn't a golf ball? What if it's like a big, huge beach ball? And flat earthers and globe earthers might be yakking about they're both a little bit wrong. Is that even something you would consider as a possibility?
Well, yes and no, because even at 1,000 times bigger, there would be measurable curvature, and there is no measurable curvature. Now, maybe it's bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, here's the thing. They've got us trapped in our circle, our Antarctic circle. If the Earth is 1,000 or 10,000 times bigger than they tell us, that means there's more land. That means there's extra territory. That means there's extra terra. And if there's people on the extra terra, I might call them an extraterrestrial. Okay? And they're from the outer space beyond Antarctica. Here's the thing, people. If you search flat Earth, Google's going to feed you the same garbage each time. Flat Earth Sunsets, Flat Earth Bruce, Flat Earth David Weiss, Flat Earth Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. Whatever you serve, if you type Flat Earth into it, you're going to get the same results, right? How much time do we have? Because I want to explain something about the censorship.
We got 3 minutes before the break.
Okay. Let me explain something about censorship. You can go on YouTube and you're watching all sorts of videos. Let's say you're into chest workouts, chest exercises. You watched a video a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago. You can go into your history, and then you could search for men's chest workouts, whatever, and all the videos you watched on it will show up in your history. Awesome, right? Go to my YouTube channel, DITRH, right, or any of the other real Flat Earth channels. Watch a whole bunch of videos that have the word Flat Earth in it. Then go check your history and search for Flat Earth, and none of them will come up. They're all hidden. And what will come up is the debunking videos, the ones that they want you to see, the ones that they want weak minds to just believe. And so why are they doing that? So my website is flatearthdave.com. There's tons of free content there. If you want more, I advise you to get my app. It's $3. It's called the Flat Earth, Sun, Moon, and Zodiac Clock app. All you got to do is remember flatearthdave.com. Tons and tons and tons of free stuff there. There's a thing called the Crash Course. Go there, turn off Netflix for a week, watch those videos, and I guarantee if you get through 3 of them, any 3, you will be a non-spinning ball flat earther.
Well, and at least there'll be skepticism at the best, Dave, because there's some hardcore people that might put themselves through that. But I would say FlatEarthDave.com is a really good resource to learn about this and actually at least try to understand the model to begin with.
It's really hard to have the rug ripped out from underneath you. If somebody told you, hey, you know what, you're adopted, and you really were, it's really hard for you to accept it, right? But if someone says everything you think about the earth is a lie and everything you've been taught since before you can talk is a lie, that's really emotionally disturbing. But once you get through it, you see this world for what it is, and you see through lots of the other lies too. So flat
Dave,
earth
I think
is the
that's
most
a good
important topic of our
that's
time.
a really good example, Dave, because I knew a couple of kids, but I knew one kid in particular who thought his parents were his parents. I mean, they didn't want to tell him. And I think he got into his either late teens or early 20s when they told him he was adopted, and it just shattered him. I mean, it shattered his life. I mean, it took him, I would say, a good 10 to 15 years to really get over the shock of that. And I think with a lot of people, I didn't feel that same thing because I was able to ease into this thing and learn about things that I believed were not true. Like, it started with me with the moon landing. To me, the trip to flat Earth as being a possibility started with the moon landing. The moon landing to me is just so much more understandably false than proving flat Earth or proving the globe. The moon landing is the easiest thing to disprove. It's just, a photographic expert, a photographer can easily debunk it just by looking at the pictures.
Yep.
We're going to hit the break. Brian with an I saw you came in. You're going to be up first. If you want to call in, have a question or a comment for Flat Earth Dave, it's 877-536-1360. We'll get Joe's response on the other side. Stay with us. You're listening to a half-empty cup of Joe.
Welcome back here, the half-empty cup, Joe and Jason, and talking flat Earth. I got a text. Someone texted me something about long lines. I wasn't able to really get into it. Another texter, here's a question, is the sun flat? Are there other planets that are flat?
Let me answer that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
We're waiting for you.
Yeah. So when you look at my visuals, if you watch my interviews, I have many examples of this. But whenever you look at anything, I show this light in the distance, and I say, is it the sun or the moon? And they're like, well, it could be the moon, it could be the sun, but it's definitely round. And then when it comes forward, you see that it's a train, and it's got 8 different lights on it. Most of them are rectangles. But anything in the distance, due to the laws of perspective, where the tops and bottoms rise up to your eye level and the sides come in, it turns everything into a sphere. So when we look up at the sky, at night and we see planets, and I encourage people, go out, look at the sky, clear your head, and ask yourself, like, the best one to look at is Jupiter. It's very, very bright. It's actually like a little piece of the sun. It's brighter than any star. Now, Jupiter is a a gaseous, dirty planet, okay, that is millions of miles farther from the sun, like 25, 50 million miles farther from the sun, not 50, somewhere in there, than we are. And you have to believe that the sunlight is reflecting off of that non-reflective surface, ignoring what we call the inverse square law of light. As light travels, it gets weaker and weaker exponentially. Somehow, it makes it to our eye, and it looks as bright as the sun. That's impossible, okay? So when we're looking at these lights in the sky that used to be called wandering stars, but now they changed them to planets, and they told you that people can walk on them, it's all lies. If you go to the Mars section on my app, onto the planet section, you'll see that the pictures that they show us of the rover on Mars are taken in Greenland and an island, Devon Island in Greenland. We found them on Google Earth. We can see them with the rover and their vans, and the rocks are the same, right? On one of the pictures they gave us from Mars, from the rover, we were zooming in on it, and we found a fly. No? Does that mean they're not on Mars? No, it means that there's flies on Mars, or maybe they're just on Devon Island, right? So when you say, are all the other planets round? Why are we the only flat one? You're mixing 2 false models. You're saying that we're a flat disk in a heliocentric space, universe. That's not what no flat earther thinks that. And you believe that there's balls out there made of rocks that perfectly go in perfect orbits, which is impossible. We're supposedly in this gravitational orbit where the sun is holding on to all of the planets, but the planets are holding on to their moons, and the sun ignores the moons, and they are more accurate than the finest Swiss watch, and that's provable because the finest Swiss watch in every timepiece is based on the sky clock. In a gravitational model where they can't even solve the problem for 3 bodies that have gravity, and there's trillions of them, I'm sorry, you've been fooled, and you just, you're reciting what we call what is technically pseudoscience.
So let me go back to the beginning of that real quick, and then we're going to go to Brian. When you're looking at something that's Jupiter that's way off in the distance, that could be a series of lights, like 5 or 6 lights, or any kind of a pattern that just kind of blends together.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying at all. When you take today's super zoom cameras, which are better than many of the telescopes, like Copernicus's telescope had a zoom of like 4x or 14x, and I think he got it up to 20x. My iPhone has better than that. Okay, but when you look at these things, these are lights themselves. They're not reflecting light. You can prove it. Go outside and where you see one of those cement balls on the side of the street. Dave. I understood that, Dave. But what I'm saying is, it might not just be one light. It could be like I've never thought about it that way. But when I zoom in on these things, they kind of look like one light, but they don't look like a solid surface. They look like an energetic, pulsing orb of energy. All the planets are named after gods. Okay. What does that mean? Why are they all named after gods? Why astrology, believe it or not, is the real science, and astronomy is the pseudoscience? So when you start looking at these things and the position of the planets, plane with a T, planet, weird name, used to be called wandering stars, you start to have a lot more questions. But one thing that we know for sure, we don't know what they are, but one thing we know for sure is they're not giant rocks or gas balls in a space vacuum. That's scientifically provable.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's, if you want to call in, 877-536-1360. I'm going to Brian with an I. Brian with an I, thanks for holding on. What is your question or comment?
Hi, guys. Have a good day. It's fun to think that astrology might be the real science and astronomy is the fake one. But why I called in, Dave, I wanted to ask you, what about people like Burt Rutan? I don't know if you're familiar with that name. He designed a particular type of small airplane that is very aerodynamic. It's a forward wing kind of thing. And then also, excuse me, the Daniels Fund is a charitable organization in Denver. I think the man's first name was Tom. I'm not sure about that, but his last name was Daniels. And he became very wealthy through cable TV back in the early, 60s, 70s, whenever. And he bought a Learjet, wealthy guy, buy a Learjet. And then he was taken with traveling and doing different things, flying. So in DIA, in the Denver airport, I think it's in Concourse A. It's one of the concourses. Might not be A, but one of them. That Learjet is suspended from the ceiling. You can see they donated it to DIA, and it hangs up there. And the thing is, point of this little story is that he hired a bunch of pilots. He wanted to set a record of or see how fast he could circle the globe. His plane could circle the globe, and so they just stopped they couldn't do in-flight refueling like the military does,
right.
But yeah. So
he had to stop for fuel. Do you know what direction he was going? Was it east or west or north or south?
Good question. Don't have a clue.
I can tell you the answer. The answer is he was going east or west, because east and west are circles around a center point. On a flat Earth, the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole, is where the axis of the Earth would be on the globe, at the north. And I'll have to answer after the break.
Yeah, Dave, finish your explanation when we get back. You're listening to David Weiss on the Half Empty Cup of Joe. We'll be right back.
Stop bitching.
We're back here, the Half Empty Cup, Joe and Jason, our guest David Weiss, and I know Dave's got a question that he's going to finish answering. Then I've got several more texters that have texted in with questions. So, Dave, go ahead and finish up the last thing we were talking about, playing and traveling the globe east and west and all of that.
So people don't realize this, and it's the same on a flat Earth, well, at least in the north. East and west are circles, because get a magnet, put it on a table, and say, that's my North Pole. Draw a big circle around it and say, this is the whole world, right? And the circle is the shoreline to what we call Antarctica. And then try to move that compass east or west, and it'll make a perfect circle. It'll circumnavigate that flat circle. So, you can go from California, out towards Hawaii and over to China and all the way around and come right back across the United States and just heading west the whole way or east the whole way. That works the same on a globe also. The only thing you can't do, or you can't do on a flat Earth, is head south and come back, and nobody has ever done it. And the one time they said they were going to do it, it was crazy what they did. They literally went down, they turned around, they came back, and they said that they did it. That's like going to the end of my street and turning around and going back to the other end of my street, turning around and coming back home and say I circumnavigated the globe, right? I just went to one place and turned around. So, and then the airplane, just real quick on the airplane, the SR-71 is the fastest airplane supposedly that we know about. It goes Mach 3.2, like 2,300 miles per hour. At that speed, if the Earth was a globe, the horizon would be dropping at 80 stories every second. Okay? 80 stories a second. Right? Think about that. 800 feet per second they would have to nose down. But that doesn't happen at all, because airplanes fly straight and level over the Earth plane. On the app, there's a whole airplane section. Check that out, and then you'll know.
Excellent, Joe. Go to these texts.
Okay, so the first one here, got a couple of them. Question for Dave. What is the pole people are standing next to presented as the South Pole in the middle of Antarctica?
Sure. They actually admit that the ceremonial South Pole, right? And there's a couple people, no public is allowed there. They say, oh, this is the real South Pole, but that's a ceremonial South Pole. And the South Pole is just literally, I don't know how many miles in from the shoreline of Antarctica. Think of Antarctica as the shoreline of a giant pond, right? The giant pond is the world oceans. All of the continents are the islands. The North Pole is at the center. And the shoreline, which is higher, when you have a pond, if the shore is lower than the water is going to flow away. Guess what? Antarctica is the highest land on Earth. Isn't that weird? Antarctica is the shoreline around our world pond. So nobody goes to the South Pole. And there is if the Earth was a dynamo, ball with a magnetic center, there would be a South Pole, a magnetic South Pole, and all compasses in the south would point to it. But they don't. They all point to the north, and when you get to Antarctica, compasses stop working because you're too far from the North Pole.
And then the last one here on the text line: how do satellites orbit a flat Earth?
So. That's another great question.
I got a question. I have a question to follow that, but go ahead, Dave.
Yeah. So they tell us that they pop a satellite up in space. It's going 17,000 miles an hour, or even faster. I don't know how it gets to go that speed, and then it's literally falling around the Earth. It still has gravity, but it's free falling forever. So think about this. The definition of a orbiting satellite is that it's free falling, but every time it falls a mile, the curvature drops another mile because it's moving forward at the same rate. So they've somehow beautifully calculated these things. So it's free falling. Here's a problem, right? And I got into an argument with ChatGPT over this, and Chat just kept changing its mind. If something is free falling without resistance, it's accelerating. How come they're not going faster and faster and faster if they're free falling and there's no wind resistance up there, right? And nobody can give you a straight answer. So satellites are not what they tell us. Now, there are lights in the sky that are moving around. Some of them are man-made tech. Some of them are natural things up there. But it's all a big deception. And once you understand that, there's also tens of thousands of satellites on balloons. And guess who controls all of the helium in the world? That would be NASA.
NASA. Yeah, yep. I know that one. I do know that one. So I have a question that I was going to ask for this show. So this is a good time to come in. I want to thank the texters for kind of leading in. There was this news story that came out about 5 months ago. It kind of captured the imagination of the public for a couple of days. And it was this Chinese spy balloon. And I from what I understand about how things are, I was looking at that thing, Dave. I'm just going to let you answer what you think it is, because I think I know what it is. What was that Chinese spy balloon? It was kind of moving all over the place, and it was going over the United States. And then, of course, we wanted to shoot it down, but we don't want to shoot it down over the population. It might hit somebody or something. And then they shot it down just over the ocean. What was that? Is there something to explain that?
It was a total psyop, because they don't realize that we're a lot smarter than them when it comes to balloons, because flat earthers do launch lots of balloons, and all different kinds of balloons. That type of balloon that they used is not possible to travel from China to the United States. It will not work. And that thing that they showed us was very low anyway. It wasn't that high. Our balloons go up much higher than that. The spy, the alleged spy balloon satellites. So that was all just a big psyop. But the balloon physically could not do what they said it do. So that balloon, wherever it was launched not far from where it was spotted. So that's a whole.
So let me ask this, because there's pictures of it, and the pictures to me look like a satellite hanging from a balloon, like I've seen on some of these satellite launches. That is an actual. It looked like a satellite.
Well, there are tons of satellites. I mean, again, on my app, if you go to the What About Satellite section on the Frequently Asked Questions page, there's a whole bunch of videos showing these satelloons crashing all over the Earth. Or just on the images page, search satellites, and you'll see. By the way, Google satellites and then look at all the pictures. They're all cartoons. There's not a single photo of a satellite in space anywhere on the web, because it doesn't exist, right? So that's a hard one for people to get their minds around. And when people start screaming about satellite phones, I'm going to do a presentation on how satellite phones work, and it's going to blow everybody away.
Excellent. Joe, any more texts? Go and.
No, I think that was the last one for now. So.
Okay, yeah, call lines have just opened up. If you want to call in, question or comment, 877-536-1360 to have a call with Dave, a question or comment. We're going to hit one more quick break before our short segment before the end of the hour. Dave's, where else do you want to go that we haven't hit today?
Just check out flatearthdave.com. Don't believe a word I say. Check out the information and think for yourself.
We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Half Empty Cup of Joe will return.
Welcome back here, the Half Empty Cup. Joe and Jason, our guest David Weiss. And, this show's going to make people lose sleep at night for sure, without a doubt. But, hey, I can help you with that. Go on to MyPillow.com. Order all the great products, the MyPillow 2.0, the Giza bed sheets. It's going to help you survive it. Put KHNC in the promo code box. That's MyPillow.com. KHNC in the promo code box. And Jason, once again, 877-536-1360. Guys, go ahead and call in, text in, whatever you want to ask Dave. He'll be happy to answer it for you. And make sure you check out his website, because a lot of these questions, it seems like he's got them up on his website already.
Yeah, Dave, give out that website one more time. I know you've said it a few times, but it's good to just keep telling people that a lot of the questions, maybe that they don't even want to come. Some people are just shy; they don't want to come on the air. Where do they go?
All my information, all my websites, all my YouTube channels, the app, the crash course, which is free. It's all at flatearthdave.com. Pretty easy to remember, right? FlatEarthDave, that's me.com. And it'll take you there, and just check it out. And here's the thing. Don't believe me, but don't be ignorant, because I was ignorant. We're all ignorant. And by the way, ignorant is not a derogatory term. Ignorant is you don't know something. Like, you're ignorant to heart surgery. I'm ignorant to heart surgery. I don't know. Okay? So
Dave, we got 2 minutes. Let's get this caller in, because we got one caller in, and then we'll give the phone number out before we end this segment. Kyle, I want to thank you, Kyle, for calling in. What is your question or comment?
I was wondering if Dave already told you guys about how NASA claims stars are formed. Okay, NASA claims that stars are formed when gas clumps together in the vacuum of space. But anytime we put gas into a vacuum, that gas expands. It fills up the entire vacuum. It doesn't clump together.
Kyle, that's an excellent call. So at the very beginning of the broadcast, I don't know if you missed it, but yeah, Dave, you had covered that. You're backing up Dave 100%, Kyle. Did you have anything else before we close you out for the day?
my thoughts were, why are we forced to lie on tests? Like, there's no room for disagreement on the Scantron. You got A, B, C, and D, but then if you don't agree with the answer that they tell you that in school, then all of a sudden you get docked for it.
Right.
So
that's a good point.
What's up with that? What's up with that?
I mean, I call it a false binary or false quadrary, whatever. They give you your choices, and you have to pick one of them. And then when they say you're right and reward you, that is now your new truth. When the truth is, they didn't tell you the truth.
Dave, It's interesting. I remember a movie called A Fish Called Wanda from the 80s.
Yep.
And then the CIA hitman, it was an English movie. It was all in England, but there was the one American. And every time someone gave him a choice, he never liked the choices. He always asked, what was the one in the middle? He wouldn't answer yes or no. It was like, what was the choice in the middle? That's how I always feel about answering questions nowadays, Dave.
It's the same. It's a question before. The Earth is flat. Are the other planets flat? No. It's not like that. The Earth is not a flat disk floating in space. That's what they want you to think it is, but that's ridiculous. Right? If you search flat Earth, you end up at the Flat Earth Society, which tells you that the Earth is rising up at 9.8 meters per second to cause gravity. No flat earther believes that. Only people ignorant to flat Earth, not a bad word, believe that flat earthers believe that. There we go. Break number 52.
Absolutely. 877-536-1360. Dan, you're first up. Please hold through the break. You'll be first up. You can call or text that number, 877-536-1360. We got David Weiss, Flat Earth Dave, here on the Half Empty Cup of Joe.
Stop it, Joe. We're back here, the Half Empty Cup, Joe and Jason. We got David Weiss today. And Flat Earth, we get it. Hey, it's a controversial subject at best. One of the texters, I'm really tired, he capitalized really tired, of this Flat Earth nonsense. It hurts the credibility of your station. Leave it to the coast-to-coasters. So, and again, hey, I understand, right? It does have, I think a lot of us are like me. I don't know what, I don't know. I don't know that I care enough to know, but there's that certain percentage that, nope, that's 1,000% false, and then there's the other that are, nope, it's 1,000% true. I think the vast majority of the audience, I think all of us are kind of open to, maybe it's not quite what they told us it was, and are open to the idea that things may be different than they appear.
Well, and let me, before I go to Dave, let me say this, because when I tell you, and my less than thorough knowledge versus Flat Earth Dave here about how Flat Earth model works, I'll get into some conversations and people asking what usually happens. And Dave, you can tell me, but what usually happens is people are like, they don't have answers for me, and I don't have all the answers for them. So it gets a little frustrating that they can't just basically prove that I'm wrong. And so what usually pops up is, well, what does it matter? Okay, if it's flat, I don't know. You don't know. We don't really know for sure. What does it even matter if it's flat? And for me, the reason that I think I got into this more to want to understand is that if the moon is not what we say it is, and we didn't land on the moon, people have essentially died over what is going on when it comes to moon landings in the Cold War with the Soviet Union and things like that. There's very real world situations when you have false knowledge and the people may be believing in false knowledge. That's why I think it's important, because if for some reason it was able to be proven to the population of the planet that the Earth is flat and we've been learning it wrong, I think that would make massive changes across the world, Dave.
It's about knowing who you are. People, smart people, when they first come up against flat Earth, they throw out all of their, sunsets and circumnavigation and this and that. And if they take the time and listen to the explanations, when they run out of excuses, or reasons they think the Earth is a globe, they throw their hands up. They go, "What difference does it make? I still have to go to work on Monday." And we all said the same thing. But the truth is, if you don't know where you are, if you think that you're spinning out of control, lost in space, that we could be hit by an asteroid, that we're running out of food, water, fuel, if you think all of that, you've lost your power. You're giving your power away, right? Flat Earth shows you that there is free energy. Flat Earth shows you that we're not overpopulated. Flat Earth shows you that there's abundance everywhere. Every family in America could have a half an acre in Texas and the rest of America would be empty. Okay? This whole narrative that's going on in the world, overpopulation and everything, it's all to keep us under control. And, it gets much, much deeper and darker. So why am I talking about Flat Earth? Because it matters more than anything else in the world right now, because Flat Earth is the foundation of your world. And if you're not standing on it and you're spinning out of control as an insignificant speck of dust flying through a gigantic universe, you've given away your power and you're not taking full advantage of your true potential.
Go ahead. Dan, hang on one second. Joe's got a comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say we got texters now all pouring in, disagreed with the previous texter. They loved the show. But really quickly, so you brought up the moon. And so is the moon not a place that we can land on? Can we not go to the moon? Because I know, recently India said, we landed some type of rover or whatever on the moon. And Russia said they tried and it blew up.
So in 1959, we had Project High Jump. Is when they started doing missions over Antarctica. And Admiral Byrd went out and he said, beyond the South Pole, well, that would be over towards Australia. He goes, there's a land bigger than the United States filled with resources that no human has ever set eyes upon. Interesting. Okay. And then literally right after that, the Antarctic Treaty was put into place. All of the countries in the world eventually signed it, saying that nobody can go to Antarctica because it's the last pristine place on Earth. And we have to protect the penguins and the ice. But go ahead, burn down the Amazon. That's fine. Okay. So, and then they turned around and they said, hey, we're going to the moon. We're going to the moon. Right. And, there were scientists back then who are like, you can't go to the moon. It's plasma. They're saying all sorts of stuff. All of that was suppressed. And they want you to believe that you can stand on a ball to keep you lost in space. Everyone, all little kids, they all want to be astronauts. They're all talking about going to other worlds. Right. Why would anyone want to go to Mars? How about just go to Ethiopia and build a dome there? You can run supplies in on a railroad track rather than have to go to Mars and live in a dome. I mean, it's the dumbest thing ever. So it matters so much that people can't see it. If you don't know who you are or where you are or what this place is, you're at a strict disadvantage. It matters. And by the way, I said it. I said, but what does it matter? Big deal. I have to go to work on Monday. Guess what? I don't have to go to work on Monday.
Dan, we blew through the segment. I'm going to go straight. Dan, go ahead and make a comment. I'm going to get you on the other side of the break. Dan, quickly throw a comment in as we're heading towards the commercial.
I disagree with the texter that Joe read. This is exactly why this show is here, to allow people to ask questions, have difficult conversations, and approach subjects that normally don't get talked about in any of the mainstream media, and I love it. And Dave, your app, since from the first time you were on this program, I downloaded the app, and it's made me think a lot. And I have a question for you when we get to the other side.
Nice.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. We're gonna go straight to Dan's question on the other side. You're listening to the Half Empty Cup of Joe. 877-536-1360. Get your calls in, man. We got plenty of show left. Talk to David Weiss, Flat Earth Dave.
It's a perfect time to play.
Welcome back to the Half Empty Cup of Joe, 877-536-1360. Dan, we're going to go straight to you. You've been holding on. Thank you for that. What is your question or comment for Dave beyond giving a big boost for Flat Earth, I guess?
Well, the most impacting thing on Dave's information for me was the flight paths of how planes travel across the Earth.
Yep.
That was really. And I have a question for him. I recently flew to Western Europe, and I could have sworn it was the moon light coming through the windows of the airplane, but we had an argument in the family whether it was the moon or the sun because it was so bright. Couldn't really tell. Do you know?
What time? What date was this about? What month?
May 25th.
May, June.
No, it was May 25th.
Okay, yeah. So you're right near the summer solstice where the sun is over the Tropic of Capricorn. Now, I can't tell you whether it was the sun or moon because I could, if I knew the date and time and everything, I probably could. But the sun makes a very tight circle around the center, And depending on the altitude that you're at, you might have seen the sun at a very far distance, and you could easily mistake it for the moon. But if you look at the app and just look at the app and put the time lapse on, and then use the little jumping guy button to bring it to May or June, you'll see the path that the sun takes, and it's very, very tight. So figure out what direction you were flying, what window you were looking out, and you'll see how you could see the sun very far away. The sun doesn't set because of curvature; it sets because of distance.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. Anything else before we cut you loose? All right, Dan. That's something I want to hit before we go to the text that Joe has. Is I find it interesting, especially after the COVID shots have been given out. A lot more people seem to be getting sick on these flights, and so they have to have these emergency landings. Dave, one of the things that is so interesting is when you see, okay, point A is where you take off, point B is where you land, okay, and when you look at, and Dave, you could probably give better actual cities and where this has happened, but point A is where you take off and point B is where you land. In between, you have an emergency, so you have to have an emergency landing. You're not going to make it to point B, and when you look at the emergency landing, point C is farther than point B. Why, if you can have an emergency landing? Yeah, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
Right. No, and they get there in unbelievable, in impossible amounts of time. I think it was coming from Hawaii to California. There was emergency. They were pretty close to California, but they went like twice the distance and landed in Alaska, right? And if you look at flight track maps on they show you these big curved lines. Oh, it's taking the Great Circle route. It's nonsense. Look at all flight routes on a flat Earth. You just find the origin and the destination, and it's a straight line, and that's where they're going. And that straight line from maybe it was from Japan to California. I forget where it was, but you look at it, and all of those emergency landings are right on the line. Sometimes they land at a place 1,500 miles out of the way, 1,500 miles out of the way, and they get there in 15 minutes. Do the math, okay? How did that happen? How did they get there?
And then, Dave, when you look at it on a flat Earth map, C ends up being right between point A and point B. Point A, point B,
every
the emergency landing on a flat Earth map is right in the middle. It's right there. It makes complete sense. And it's things like this that's got to make people think there's something's up, right, Dave?
On the app, on the frequently asked questions page, there's a Southern Flight Routes, which has a whole bunch of videos. But also in the images section, just go to the search bar and search flight routes or Southern Flight Routes. It'll come right up. All of the maps come up. You can look at them. Easy to see. People love reading memes. They're memes. And then on my website, flatearthdave.com, there's a book called 16 Emergency Landings that have documented all of it for you. All the information. Don't just believe me. Don't just believe a meme. Don't just believe an image. Look at the data. Look at the information. Look at the news reports. It's all put together. It's an awesome book. And it's also free online as a PDF, but you can also get the book. But the links are on the website and in the app.
Excellent. I got Chris coming in. But if you want to call in, you'll be right behind Chris on the call lines. 877-536-1360. Chris, thank you for calling in. What is your comment or question?
Hey, how you doing? Hey, Dave, this is Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hello.
Yep. Go ahead, Chris.
So Dave and I got into Flat Earth probably around the same time. I'm going to say about February of 2015. Sound about right to you, Dave?
Yep.
And we went through the same thing. How could this be? This is nonsense. This is crazy. And once you look at it and use common sense instead of the brainwashing that we went through all our years of education, I struggled with it in the beginning too. And then after a while, look at the bottom line is this: the Earth is not moving. If you even want to introduce someone to the concept of flat Earth, start with that, because the fact that they say we're moving at 66,000 miles an hour around the sun is insane. It's ludicrous. To think that the Earth is stationary. It is absolutely 100% stationary. Planes could not take off or land on a ball made out of water, which of course is ridiculous, at these crazy speeds that we can't even comprehend. We're told, planes fly at 600 miles an hour. Oh, and the Earth is revolving around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour? And how come the Earth doesn't crash into any of the satellites or any of the planes flying above it? And planes have no trouble taking off and landing on this ball made out of water, which, of course, a ball can't be made out of water. once you look at it, and it's funny because I remember when I was about 10 years old, I asked my mom, who was my fifth grade social studies teacher, I said, yeah, I know the Earth is a globe, and I said, but wouldn't the people in Australia be upside down? And she said, oh, wow, that's a good point. But then she never answered it because it can't be answered. She said, like, oh, that's good. And then we just moved on with our lives. And, it's just, and once you look at it from a common sense point of view, she had no answer. And the argument is that, oh, well, to the person in New York, the person in Australia is upside down. The person in Australia, the person in New York is upside down. Well, someone's upside down. They both can't be right side up. On a flat surface, everybody's right side up. Someone's got to be upside down.
Chris, you brought up an interesting point. Chris, you brought up an interesting point, which is, I just want to say this. Chris brought up an interesting point because when people talk about things, it's almost like talking to mom and dad, isn't it? When they don't have answers, it's because I told you so. Isn't that what it is about the globe? It's because I told you so. I'm glad that Chris brought that up because that seems to be what a lot of globe believers tell me when we try to have a discussion. Joe, you had a comment. Go for it.
Well, and again, the brainwashing, right? That's because that's right what we've been taught, and you've been taught that from the the very beginning of school when you start talking about the Earth and the planets, right? This is what you've been taught your whole life. The text line, because somebody had mentioned it just here, talking about why haven't we crashed into the satellites? But the question on the text line, Dave, what do you think about the space station?
Okay. Let me answer that, but real quick, Chris is a New York City school teacher that got fired because he wanted to remain a pureblood, okay? And Chris is a great truth fighter. Oh, yeah. So that's a whole other thing, but let's stay on one topic
just to let you know, Dave, we made a series of pureblood coins around a Fake News Friday program that we had going for a while, and we had a lot of people that were buying these silver coins that the Gold and Silver Company made, with the line right through the mask and the vaccination, the pure blood coins. I'll have to get in touch with you and maybe get you one of these pure blood coins. I think you'd get a kick out of it. But
I'd love it.
But continue on. We have caller Jim waiting too, but continue on, Dave.
So the International Space Station is a complete and total joke. I mean, you can't have a tin can in space pressurized inside of a vacuum; it would explode. And if you look at if you catch them hanging from wires once, or using green screens once, or screwing up, having a glass of water sitting on the table in space in zero gravity, if you catch them dropping things and they fall just once, right, then you know that they're faking it. But we've caught them 1,000 times. Watch my interviews. Go to my channel and flatearthdave.com, and then go down to recent interviews. There's many of them where we go over the International Space Station. And also there's an ISS button on the Frequently Asked Questions page with all of the nonsense that going out there. But people say, hey, I've seen it. Guess what? I've seen it too. I see a light.
Well, Dave, there's always that famous picture, the famous picture where they have George Bush Sr. going through NASA there, and they're showing the green screen where the astronauts are right.
Yep.
It's famous.
Absolutely.
You can look it up. George Bush is being shown NASA.
That's my video.
And there's a green screen with the astronauts right there.
Yeah.
It's
that's happened many times, time after time. All you have to do is catch them once. We have Elon Musk showing a test rocket launch that's supposedly going to Mars, and it is so fake. I don't even have to tell you it's fake. I show it to people, and they go, well, that's not real. And I'm like, this is what they presented as real. Therefore, all of that stuff is fake. You only have to catch them lying once to know that they're liars, okay? Space is fake. Go listen to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Space may be the final frontier, but it's made in a Hollywood basement. And the rest of the song is literally talking about everything that's happening right now.
Excellent. Hey, we got Jim calling in. If you want to call in, 877-536-1360. Jim is now the last caller on the line, so you can get in right away. Jim from Missouri, thanks for calling in. What is your comment or question?
I've been driving truck for 35 years now, and I deliver plane parts to a bunch of guys that run airplanes and stuff like that. I talk to these guys. I mean, how did you get them all to lie? Is my question, because a lot of these guys, they're not liars. I've spoken to them.
Yes, they're not liars. Absolutely not. So I recently just published a video. It's 3 hours long, 27 pilots admitting that the Earth is flat. Most of them don't know, but a large percentage now do know. All of the Southern pilots at Qantas Airlines.
How do they fly planes if they don't know?
Well,
it doesn't make.
I'll tell you how.
I'll tell you how.
Yes. So let me answer the question. So they go on the runway, they take off, they fly the plane down the runway, they get it up to altitude, and they turn on autopilot. Autopilot is run by GPS. GPS is run by NASA. Okay? They're just flying across a level plane. They don't know anything about curvature. They think that there's a device that's hooked up to their gyro that adjusts for curvature, but there's been examples where planes their device was broken, and then control tower says, just fly anyway, it's fine. And they go halfway around the world and never adjust for curvature, but they're flying straight and level. Airplane, Earth plane, not air globe, Earth plane. Imagine this. If you're sitting in at the North Pole or even just northern Alaska, at that latitude, the Earth is moving maybe 200-300 miles an hour to make its complete circle around the pole on a globe. So you fly to Ecuador and you want to land on a north-south oriented runway that's moving sideways at 1,000 miles an hour. Where's that plane going to get that 700-800 miles an hour of sideways movement to land on that runway? And the answer is it doesn't, because the Earth isn't moving. So I encourage you, check out the Southern flights, check out the airplane section in the app, and then all of these, and they're not liars. They just don't know, but many of them are waking up. Watch the video, 327 pilots. And we also have Navy whistleblowers from the Air Force that talk about how it's not curved and how their weapons completely prove that there is zero curvature from the Earth.
Dave, let me ask a question, because we're gonna hit another break in about a minute. I've been seeing just recently, right in front of Congress, you have this really reliable, trusted military man talking about, I've seen the alien ships. We have them in warehouses, and suddenly the government's talking about films from 2004 of UFOs. What's going on with that in relation to flat Earth?
I'll start the answer, and on the other side, I'll finish it. But think about this. The closest star is 25 trillion miles away. Did an alien ship come that far and crash in Roswell, or did it just come from beyond Antarctica with advanced technologies that they're hiding from us, free energy technologies? What difference does it make? What if you didn't have to pay for electricity, heating, or gasoline? Would that make a difference in your life? What if you had something the size of a roll of quarters that would power your vehicle and your house forever for free? Would that change your life?
There you go. Lots of technology. We'll talk a little technology on the other side. Phone lines are open, 877-536-1360. We've got a couple more segments with Flat Earth Dave on the other side.
We're back here. Joe and Jason, the half-empty cup. David Weiss joining us in, talking about Flat Earth and the latest, talking about, hey, what about these pilots? I get it, right? Dave's talking about, hey, listen, they think they're telling you, they're not lying to you because they've been told, well, we do it, and this instrument does it, or this thing does it, and why would they question that? Why would they believe anything different?
Let me just add to that real quick. A lot of people go to pilots on the way out of the plane and ask them, and half the time they're like, yeah, it's flat. But they can't say anything because if they do, they get grounded, right? If they do, they literally get grounded. So they're worried about their job, so they just keep quiet about it. Nobody brings a globe into the cockpit to figure out where they're going, because if they did, I'd get off that plane immediately. And the other thing about this device, there's literally like a black box. It's not black, it's orange. And it connects up to the autopilot. And it says on it, do not open, serviceable only by XYZ manufacturer, right? So one pilot was looking into it, and because he was about to take a flight, and it wasn't working. They didn't have a replacement one. Normally, they just swap it out if it's not working. And they told him to fly. He flew. It didn't make any – he was supposed to call in every 10 minutes or whatever, or 20 minutes for adjustments, and he never had to make any adjustments. And he found out that there's only one company called like Boeing and Lockheed, and they gave him the runaround. And then he finally said, well, it's made here. And he calls the company as a pilot. Normally, they get white glove treatment. and they wouldn't give them any. They just run them around. No, call this line, call that line. Nobody would answer. It would just transfer. No answer. So it's just literally a trick to make people think that they live on a ball.
Well, there you go. We have the call lines open, 877-536-1360, so you can jump right in. But so, Dave, yeah, we covered a lot of ground in the first 3-4 quarters of the show here. What else would you like to tell our audience? Because this is an open moment here.
You're as long as you can hear me, you're roboting a little bit. But
Okay.
People say, we already talked about this a little bit, but why does it matter? This is the thing that matters. I used to be looking into some other big events, like the thing that happened in New York and Boston and other ones, and I was like, you know what? They're so clearly not what they are told us as, told to be. But people would see them, and then they go right back to sleep. You wake someone up to Flat Earth, they never leave, okay? They never leave because it affects them every day. It affects every single person every day, everywhere. And this is when you say, why does it matter? Let's say this half cup of Joe show goes viral and everyone on Earth sees it tomorrow for some reason, Let's say Elon Musk tweets it and so does Justin Bieber. And then everyone on Earth sees it tomorrow and everyone wakes up. The lead are done. They're finished. All governments fall, right? And there's a huge thing. But when that happens, they lose control over the people. And it's, again, flat is not a shape. Flat is a description of level and horizontal. Everything we experience in life shows us that we're level, horizontal, and not moving, right? And then once you understand that, okay, this place is intelligently designed, now you have no choice to deny that there is a creator, okay? They don't want you in a situation where you can't deny creation. They want you to believe in a Big Bang where gases collapse upon each other and create giant suns and stars of incomprehensible sizes. They want you to believe that you're an insignificant speck, that you came from pond scum and turned into a frog and turned into a monkey and turned into a human. They want you to believe everything that goes against creation, right? And so once you wake up from that, you literally disconnect from the system, and that's what they don't want because they want your energy. This is literally a spiritual war that we're in, and the way they get away with it is they've convinced people that a spiritual war is nonsense.
Something I want to ask is because there's no way that Flat Earth Dave knows all the answers about everything in creation. That nobody has those answers. So on one simple question, but then another one. But the simple question is, a lot of people, well, if it's flat, what's under it? How far down does it go? And I usually just tell them I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows. But do you have any? Is there any theories that are prevailing?
So. The deepest hole ever dug, flat or globe, is what's in Russia. It's called the Kora borehole, and they worked on it for years and years and years. And they were using ground-penetrating radar to see what they were going to hit next. They said, all right, no more rocks, and they hit rocks. They said, all right, no more water. They hit water. And so the ground-penetrating radar, while they were drilling, was useless. They should get their money back. Then, just short of 8 miles, they hit an impenetrable barrier. They tried for years and years and years, and they could not get through it. Now, so then they finally shut up the hole after some crazy stuff happened. But if we had more time, I'll tell you about it. But the analogy of that is if you get a Macintosh apple, and I say Macintosh because Macintosh has a very thin skin. They drilled a quarter of the way, maybe an eighth of the way through that skin, and they were wrong every step of the way. And then all of a sudden they know what the next 4,000 miles is to the center. They know all of these layers. They know that there's a molten magnetic core, which is impossible. You can't have a molten magnet. You heat any magnet of any type, and before it melts, it reaches what's called the Curie point, and that's where it loses its magnetism. But they want us to believe that there's a molten magnetic core. How do they know this? If there was a molten magnetic core, impossible, there would be a North Pole and a South Pole, magnetic. But there is no North Pole or South Pole, magnetic. If you have a North Pole on a ball, you have to have a South Pole. But there isn't a South Pole. There is no magnet. There's no compass that points to the South Pole. And when you're in the deep South, Antarctica, the outer lands, you're so far from the north that your compass doesn't work. So, again, what's below the flat Earth? Nobody knows. And anyone that claims to, when you look at that meme in everyone's textbook, of geology, just know it's a meme. It's a pseudoscience meme.
Excellent. Here's another question then, because let's just, I'm sure we got listeners that are hearing this and they're thinking, maybe there's a few of them out there. It's like, okay, I'm going to take a look at this. I'll go ahead and, we got some, I'm sure there's a lot of skeptics that won't call in because you got a lot of answers, Dave. That could be very intimidating. Well, let's just say you woke up a few people to just give it a shot. And there's your website is filled full of stuff, but I mean, you could get lost on where to start. I started trying to understand this stuff when my listeners challenged my understanding that we landed on the moon. That's where I started, and then I started moving towards understanding this. What would you suggest be somebody's first place to start studying to see whether there's any validity to flat Earth?
Yeah, so just because they faked the moon landing doesn't mean the Earth is flat, and I'll agree with that.
No.
Sure, if we lived in a heliocentric world or whatever. But it is the reason that they went to the moon. It's the reason that all of the countries in the world that have space programs, they're all working together. NASA is not a space agency. NASA is the World Intelligence Agency. Every intelligence agency from the CIA to the KGB reports to NASA, believe it or not. Look into it, and you'll start to see that it's all a complete and total control grid. So the best place to start, flatearthdave.com. Go to the crash course and watch the video, 21 questions.
Stay with us. We'll have more of Flat Earth Dave on the other side.
Welcome back here, the half-empty cup of Joe and Jason. Our guest, David Weiss. FlatEarthDave.com is where you can go to get all of this stuff. It sounds like you can be out there for weeks and weeks and weeks and still not get through all the stuff that Dave has put together. And it really is. It's something that we talk about this in other things, about how the government lies and manipulates to exert control over the people, and this is just, as far as I'm concerned, this is just another one of the things to add on to the list of saying, hey, it's in the realm of possibility that this is exactly what is happening to everybody. And Jason, the school system, right? It's a great breeding ground, right? It's the best way to brainwash, and they've got it set up. When I went to school, the mom stayed home. You went to kindergarten for like a few hours a day. Now mom and dad are at work. You got your kids in pre-K and kindergartens all day. I mean, they've ramped up. Now everyone's got to go to college, right? The brainwashing, they want it to continue for as long as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting, and Dave maybe can help with this. I got a couple quick questions too. But I had a listener talk to me, and he said, and this is not too long ago, but when he went to school at an early age, he actually came into class, and they had a flat Earth model and a globe Earth model, and they were showing different ways in which the Earth actually could be formed, which kind of shows that it wasn't completely eradicated out of the school system as early as just maybe 4 decades ago. Was flat Earth still a part of the teaching as recently as sometime last century?
It was in the 50s and early 60s. I know people reporting the same thing, that they were taught both. And then when the Rockefellers took over the school system, they completely eliminated the Gleason's map, and they took away everything, even mentioning flat Earth. And people just go with it. I did my famous interview with Ruth in 2020, a 102-year-old woman who was taught flat Earth in school in the 1920s. And it's not as old as you think. It was, in the mid-1900s, the Gleason's map was in every textbook and in encyclopedias and libraries, but then somehow it disappeared. And now
and then Neil Armstrong jumps off of a spaceship and says, "One small step for man," and then flat Earth is gone. I mean, I saw the videos of that scientist proclaiming before the moon landing in the mid-'60s, saying that, look, the moon is plasma energy. We will never land on it. And then those are things that you don't see anymore.
Yeah, actually, that video, a part of that video is featuring on the app in the next couple of days. Every day there's a featured video, and that one is coming out again because it's worth. A lot of people haven't seen it, but you only see and hear what they want you to see and hear. Right now the internet has gotten away from them a little bit, and what are they doing? They're trying to clamp it down. The Senate hearings a couple of years ago, when they talked about, misinformation on YouTube, they used flat Earth as the example. I mean, why are they bringing what really? They don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society, is what Obama said a half a dozen times during his term during speeches. But they don't have time to talk to us, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye, the lying guy with the bow tie. But they spend, they make video after video after video straw manning us, fake arguments against us. They'll say stuff that we don't believe and say that we believe it. But who gets to see those videos? All of the space fans. They get to see those. They don't get to see our stuff. Our stuff is hidden. Right?
No debates. No serious debates with these guys.
Yeah, there's so many big podcasters out there that have huge audiences that know the Earth is flat, but they're afraid to talk about it. They're afraid of losing their audience. They're afraid of upsetting people. They're just afraid. They're waiting for the dike to break, and the dike is breaking. There's many people like you guys, Stu Peters, Flat Earth, Peggy Hall, Flat Earth. Right? There's a lot of people out there. Justin Bieber, not that I'm a fan of Justin Bieber, but he is a flat earther. He knows the Earth is flat, but he has to worry how he's going to waste $1 million this weekend. Okay.
Justin Bieber's a flat earther. I know, you never know what you're going to hear when you tune in.
But
I know there's a lot of NBA basketball players that
Seth
talk
Curry,
about
I think, is one.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let me ask you real quick. Is it? There's two things. I had one person that considers themselves confused that emailed me. He doesn't really believe in flat Earth or a globe, just confused. And the thing that they're asking is for him it doesn't help him with flat Earth or with with a globe when it comes to the moon always being the same picture when you look at it. He's like it doesn't make sense on a flat Earth or a globe to him. Why does the moon always look the same?
Well, this is again, it's a lot easier with visuals, but we see what we call our azimuthal grid of vision, or our personal atmospheric dome. So we can see a certain distance. Our eyes can see a certain distance in all directions. Connect all of those endless points, and it creates a dome of vision over you. And I believe that the source of the moon is being projected onto that dome. So as it moves around, it's just it's just the same image going over the dome. And again, depending on where you are on Earth, on the flat Earth, it rotates like a wagon wheel. They put a moon on a big giant ceiling fan and stand underneath it and watch it wagon wheel over you, but the same side is facing you. That's exactly how we experience the moon.
So Dave, it's its own light source?
It is definitely its own light source because, they say, if you double the distance to a light, it's a quarter of the brightness. Double it again, it's a quarter of the brightness. Or get half as close to a light, it's 4 times brighter. So we see the moon, the full moon at 1 lumen, go halfway there, it's 4. Halfway again, it's 16. Halfway again, it's 64. Halfway again, and by the time you're 100 miles from the moon would be 60 times brighter than the sun for us to see it at the brightness we see it. Again, this is where people's brains just short circuit. They're like, I can't fathom that, so therefore I have to trust a guy in a bow tie who lies, right? People have been taught to believe nonsense and not believe their God-given common sense. William Casey, I believe the guy's name was, the CIA director, that said once the American people, once everything they believe is a lie, our mission is completed. Well, their mission is completed.
Yes. Really quick, is it true that all astronauts are Freemasons?
Yes.
We got one more short segment with Flat Earth Dave. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Final segment on the half-empty cup of Joe. Joe and Jason were joined today by Flat Earth Dave. We'll have him tell his website out again, but I threw that last one out real quick at the end, Dave, about every astronaut's a Freemason, and when you see these astronauts and the press releases and the launches and first woman goes to space and the first teacher goes to space, the first black person goes to space, I guess it makes me feel like I'm waiting for the first non-Freemason to go to space. Well, I wonder if that will ever happen.
Yeah, maybe it will. I mean, but they just have to be liars because I don't think none of them have been to space, so they're all lying except maybe Don Pettit, who actually is that dumb where he actually thinks he went to space.
What about William Shatner? What about William Shatner?
William Shatner was broke, and he took a payday to pretend that he was slingshotted up. a lot of people say he was just slingshotted up, and so he had his his zero G flight, and then he landed in the desert. There's zero chance that he was shot up in the air. That whole thing was a CGI launch, and they parachuted something out of an airplane. It crashed into the desert, and then they put the guys on there, and they came out. Think about this. He was slingshotted, 91-year-old William Shatner, however old he is, big, fat guy, slingshotted up in space, crashes into the desert, no doctors, no nurses, no paramedics, no nothing. Just Jeff Bezos and a couple of wives and a cameraman, right? Give me a break.
Even at a high school football game, there's an ambulance, right, Joe?
Absolutely. Right. I used to run a little school fair, and we had to have 2 ambulances.
What do you think, Joe?
I can't say the word.
You know what? I didn't know that was how that went all down. I remember Shatner saying that he was going to go in space, and then I remember when he was done, he was like, yeah, that wasn't very exciting. I think that was his kind of line on it. I didn't know that they didn't even have anybody out there. You would think that you would have, fire engines standing by, ambulances standing by, right? All of that stuff.
What's the other guy, the sports player, newscaster, a black guy that when he went up just before William Shatner? I'm spacing on his name, but
Me too.
he went up and said his quote was, "That was unreal." It was unreal. That's all he said. It was unreal.
I find it funny, Dave, that I had never seen it until recently, but was it Capricorn 1, the old movie from the 70s?
Oh yeah,
with O.J. Simpson, and they take the astronauts off the Mars flight, and then they say, well, it was gonna blow up. You weren't gonna make it to Mars, so they bring him to a movie set. So we're gonna fake it, and then O.J. Simpson says the funniest thing. Do you really think you're going to get away with this? When I heard O.J. Simpson saying that pre accusations of murder,
hey, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Really want to thank David Weiss for being here with us. We're going to have him again next month. Dave, thank you so much for being so patient, answering all our call and texters' questions, and we can't wait to have you back again.
FlatEarthDave.com. There's lots of free stuff there. If you really want the information, get the app. That way you have it with you at all times. Just watch the daily video every day, and you too can lose the respect of your family and friends because you'll be a flat earther. But don't worry, it's changing. The Friend Finder hit 115,000 people. Just
Dave, you may lose the respect of your family, but you will become the most interesting family member.
Thank you. All right, peace, everybody.